Hello, I'm Mikko Tolonen. I'm an associate professor of digital humanities and docent of history at the University of Helsinki. I'd like to talk to you today about academic conferences and how to think about these in the humanities, especially now when we are forced to be in the online space. Now, first, why would I be talking to you about academic conferences and why should you listen? Well, I got quite a lot of experience to justify my existence. So in the past, before this year, I've organized about more than 10 international conferences. Some even worked out pretty well. I've got a background in intellectual history and computational history. So if we look at the conferences that I've been organizing, there's a certain logic to it. So it's not just doing one event, but kind of building a profile. So a lot about big data, conceptual change, digital history, open science, and so forth. But the main part or the main source where I'm drawing from, my experience, is as a chair of digital humanities in the Nordic and Baltic countries. We are a fairly young organization. It was started in 2015. Since 2016, we've been organizing an in-person annual international conference, although this year we had to convert it online. This was quite a traumatic experience, but also a reason to think quite a bit about online conferences. Now, when we think about conferences and humanities, I think now is a very, very good time to ask a question: why would I organize a conference in the first place? It is, of course, about presenting ongoing work, communicating knowledge, meeting your peers, networking, and so forth. But in the humanities, we've had a tradition of organizing these events without thinking about that as a sort of a publishing platform. Now, when publications are obviously all kinds of other things than just peer-reviewed articles, we also need to think whether we would want to add peer review also to conferences. So then the publications coming out of that, the abstract combined to a video of the presentation, for example, can have a lot of more weight when it's peer-reviewed and actually thought about more carefully, and it is not just collections of thoughts of ongoing work. Also, from the perspective of the organizers of the event, you should think about the continuity. Where, in which context does the conference belong? Is it just a one-off event? If it is, why couldn't it be tied to some other community and institutions? Also thinking about the conference proceedings in a new way, maybe, like they do in language technology and also in some other fields of humanities, where, for example, conference as a publishing platform can be very flexible, and also exchanging ideas is, of course, always there at the fore. Of course, the question that are the normal conferences over? There is a reason why we should be restricting our traveling also from the sustainability perspective. But I think that there will be no going back to the time when we would travel every month to a conference or so. So the old routines, I think we need to give them up. But I still don't think we need to think about meeting in person. The time will change. There will be time when we can go back and have conferences as well. But I think it's more about mixing the elements and thinking about the online conference as a valid option that each academic community needs to think seriously about. Now, this is my typology of 3 types of different online conferences. So at the bottom, and on the bottom for purpose, because I don't think this is a very valid option, is the so-called hybrid conference. This is a conference that really clings on to the normal in-person conference, so trying to mix the elements by giving an option that some people will participate remotely and some are on site in person. I don't think this works very well. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but I think that a much better thing is to think, if you're organizing an online conference, you organize an online conference. If it's a regular sort of called in-person conference, then it's an in-person conference. Then there's the second type, the kind of an in-person conference that is then converted online. I think this is the most typical situation currently. So we're trying to replicate in the online form what we've been doing in person. I think there's a lot of good reasons why you would think rather about the digital conference. That is rather exciting actually when you think about it, and about the options that you have when organizing one such conference. Now, the hybrid conference, the reason I say that it's at the bottom, that is the most difficult one, is that even if you are able to do it so that some people are in person and some are online, the chances are that the experience of the conference will be very uneven. As an organizer, you kind of lose control. You can't talk to everybody getting their experience, how things are going. Some people have a nice dinner, some don't. Some people are actually conversing in person, meeting the other one during the coffee break. The other ones are not. So that is really a negative thing. Then when you think about the conference that is meant to be or designed as you do design a conference when you are there in person, and you just convert it to Zoom or other online platform, of course you lose the networking. There are options. You can use different kinds of platforms and other ways of trying to enhance the networking, but it's always difficult. There's also the aspect of losing the value of the experience. People tend to do other things when they are in an online conference. So if it's a 3-day conference and some participate only by giving their own presentations, it can be difficult. Of course, this kind of a flexibility in the participation makes it possible for you to see as a participant many different conferences. But if we think about conferences have had a very, very important place as a kind of a academic education or upbringing of younger scholars. And if we go to the only online form, this will easily be lost. Of course, then the idea of extending the participation, that's the very best part of the online conferences. So not everybody needs to have the grants, traveling grants, to come and give the presentations in person. And also then when people are familiar with the conference structure that has been done in person, familiarity is not a bad thing. The very good things about if you think about such digital born conferences is that you can really be creative. You can mix live and recorded elements. For example, the quality of the presentations gets better when they are recorded and people actually think how they do it. So instead of giving the talk at the certain time, you can play it as a video, and then you have the question and answer. That of course is maybe the most important part of presentations, when you get engagement between people. You have that live, so that's a good thing, and people can watch also the recorded elements at a different time. So even if you're busy during your day, you can watch them according to your own schedule. Widening of the audience is a very good thing. And also then, why would you need to think about the time scale in the same way as you do a conference where you invite people to come there in person? So in a digital born conference, the time scale can be much longer than normal. Of course, the commitment of the participants, lack of networking, is really a serious problem. So that's something that also would need to be overcome. Just to talk about the Digital Humanities in the Nordic and Baltic countries conference in 2020, there was really a large drama. We started as an in-person conference, converting it to online. So still on the 11th of March, we were thinking that there will be an in-person conference next week. What happened then? The next day, the situation really changed dramatically within days, and we had to cancel the original in-person conference. And the Riga people, the local organizers, the amount of stress and trouble they went through was incredible. Then also, then we decided that we will convert to October. And in September, we had to make a decision what are we going to do with respect to converting the in-person conference online. So as a board and together with local organizers and the board for the conference, we were thinking, we set a date in September saying that, okay, if by this date it's still uncertain whether we can have the in-person, then we're just going to do the online conference, which is what we did in October. Everything went well, but I just want to emphasize that this kind of transitions, they aren't easy, and we were extremely happy with the resilience of the local organizers that we were able to pull this through. Now, the best part about the DHN 2020 conference was the kind of a relief when we were actually having the conference. We were all very, very nervous. Will anybody show up? Will people cancel their talks? Who will follow the talks? Will there be technical trouble, Zoom bombers, and so forth? But everything went really, really well, of course, thanks to the Riga people. And then we were able, and it was really a sort of a good moment when we were able to say that the location for the conference really is Earth. So that the Nordic community is about spirits, but it's not set to place so that you need to be in one place or the other. And this was really something that we were happy about. One thing that needs to be underlined is that converting an in-person conference to an online environment really takes a lot of hard work. So here you see the so-called command center they had in Riga. So a couple of people were all the time there ready, and we had 3 parallel sessions during the conference, which also meant that there had to be technical assistance in each session, and also chairs and other people involved. So the team that the National Library of Latvia put together was big enough, and we were really happy that everything ran smooth. Here on the right you see my personal home setup. One thing that was a real pleasure to see and a relief really was that the people came. The people were participating. We didn't lose participants. We actually gained more, and people were coming all over Europe, but also other places from Australia, US, and so forth. One of the better things about, if we look towards the future about online conferences, is that we can really gather data. So from Zoom, you get all kinds of different data. We can start making participant profiles as well, start looking into how individual people participated in different sessions, who just came for their own talk, how on aggregate level, how normal is it just to follow a few papers of your own interest, and how many of the people were the kind that are following throughout the whole conference. Of course, you had to be registered to participate in our conference, so it wasn't a completely open conference as such, but we still had more than 300, close to 300 participants altogether, and more than 200 people following some of the parallel sessions at one time. Just a few practical aspects when going online that if you're organizing a conference that you might want to think about. One thing is that the Zoom fatigue is really real. This is something that you want to think about. So mix elements and build positive traditions. One thing that we started in digital humanities Nordic conference in 2018, we had a triangle chiming when sort of instructing people to go to their next session. And we have been passing on that triangle to the next conference, and that has sort of developed into one little detail, but still very, very important when you accumulate this kind of a small parts of tradition, but building, looking at the continuity of things instead of just doing one heroic action. That I think is extremely important when building communities in general. But also, Zoom, everybody starts to be familiar with that in academia, but also other communication platforms. Slack can work if people are engaged in it. So that as an element of a conference, element of networking can be very good. Also thinking about what can you make available. Videos, proceedings, abstracts. Humanities people are often very concerned about the sort of a digital fingerprint that they are leaving. But what is the harm of making a video and letting others watch it? A lot of people do the same thing in social media anyway, with their words. So what is a bad part about having your well-prepared conference presentation be seen by other people? So really recording the videos is a good thing, but then having the discussion live, to have an engagement, having people discussing things, that is of course what matters at a conference. Papers can also be shorter, and if you're doing a conference proceedings, getting that out before the conference so people can actually read the papers is a very, very good idea. So having all of these elements available makes the experience much, much better. And this is a way of saying all of this is that if the community is strong, if it's solid, people will also come up. They will devote their time to the conference. So especially about the digital-born conferences, think about it. So time zones really are the only geographical restrictions why people could participate at a particular hour. But why? Who says that a conference needs to run from 9 to 5? Why could it be spread out for a month, for 2 hours or 4 hours each day, or just 3 days a week or whatever, sort of becoming a sort of a mixture of seminar series and something else. Also mixing the live and recorded elements is very good. And this is a very good way of making something that people think is very niche into something big, building a global community. A lot of people in the humanities study topics that are restricted to only a few people in one place. But if you look at the whole question globally, you have much bigger community, and you can do a lot of work by using this. So rethinking the time scale and rethinking the whole concept, what you are about to do when you organize a conference, is a very good time to do that now. A good example, the 18th Century Society in Australia and New Zealand, their conference that is online now is a very good example of this. So they've spread the time scale. They have the keynote speakers giving their papers as live. Others are recorded. And then the questions and discussions, that will go live, as well as some other events as well. But if we look at, for example, here's an example of their keynote presentation, and what you see here is good rethinking of the whole concept. So you find your time zone wherever you are, whether you're in London or Sydney or Seoul, and you can follow that. So this is a very, very good way of conceptualizing what you can do when you're thinking about a digital-born conference. Of course, the sustainability of humanities conference is something we really need to keep in mind. So continuity. Why do you organize something? Share your best practices. If you get data of what kind of people are doing or participating, what kind of sort of a participant profiles we get out of the data, share these, publish even on these, and people then know, what is the best way of going about. So building our choices based on some knowledge. Think about conference handbooks. especially if you're organizing an annual conference, how can you disseminate all that little information that is very, very crucial for organizing a conference? How do you pass that on? Then also really think about why do I want to organize something? Think about the proceedings and so forth. And also try to solve the question of networking. How do we get people to engage? That is very, very important. And I think towards the future, when I said that I don't think that in-person conferences are over, I think then it's a question of mixing things. So when do we have an in-person conference and when do we have an online conference? And so that it is not only meaning that the conferences will be more seldom organized, but that people actually participate in both. I think that's what really matters. So in conclusion, we do need both in-person and online conferences, also in the future. But we really need to learn how to make those digital-born conferences so people enjoy them, learn from them, and participate in them as well. So there is really nothing that can compensate for the in-person conference coffee break. That is something that needs to keep in mind. We need to meet people. We need to have a personal relationship with people. But really, that was all that I had to say. I hope that maybe some of you get some ideas from this. And I hope to see you later at online conferences as well.